Chapter 31 today. A cedar in Lebanon. In the 11th year, in the 3rd month, on the 1st day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his hordes, who can be compared with you in majesty? Consider Assyria, once a cedar in Lebanon, with beautiful branches overshadowing the forests. It towered on high, its top above the thick foliage. The waters nourished it. Deep springs made it grow tall. Their streams flowed all around its base and sent their channels to all the trees of the field. So it towered higher than all the trees of the field. Its boughs increased and its branches grew long, spreading because of abundant waters. All the birds of the air nested in its boughs. All the beasts of the field gave birth under its branches. All the great nations lived in its shade. It was majestic in beauty with its spreading boughs, for its roots went down to abundant waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not rival it, nor could the pine trees equal its boughs, nor could the plane trees compare with its branches. No tree in the garden of God could match its beauty. I made it beautiful with abundant branches, the envy of all the trees of Eden in the garden of God. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says: because it towered on high, lifting its top above the thick foliage, and because it was proud of its height, I handed it over to the ruler of the nations for him to deal with according to its wickedness. I cast it aside, and the most ruthless of foreign nations cut it down and left it. Its boughs fell on the mountains, and in all the valleys its branches lay broken in all the ravines of the land. All the nations of the earth came out from under its shade and left it. All the birds of the air settled on the fallen tree, and all the beasts of the field were among its branches. Therefore, no other trees by the waters have ever to tower proudly on high, lifting their tops above the thick foliage. No other trees so well watered are ever to reach such a height. They are all destined for death. For the earth below among mortal men, with those who go down to the pit. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day was brought down to the grave, I covered the deep springs with mourning for it. I held back its streams, and its abundant waters were restrained. Because of it, I clothed Lebanon with gloom, and all the trees of the field withered away. I made the nations tremble at the sound of its fall when I brought it down to the grave with those who go down to the pit. Then all the trees of Eden, the choicest and best of Lebanon, all the trees that were well watered, were consoled in the earth below. Those who lived in its shade, its allies among the nations, had also go down to the grave with it, joining those killed by the sword. Which of the trees of Eden can be compared with you in splendor and majesty? Yet you, too, will be brought down with the trees of Eden to the earth below. You will lie among the uncircumcised with those killed by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his hordes, declares the sovereign Lord. So there was a lot of information given in here, and how even there were different times where Egypt was of so much power that it was worldly. It was able to influence what happened throughout other nations, and so we can see this all the way back in the Old Testament, all the way back in Genesis. We're in the Old Testament, but all the way back in Genesis, where basically David ended up getting sold to traders to go to Egypt. And when that happened, we understood that Egypt was already a prospering nation. It was already a prospering, growing nation, in and it was a nation that had its own practices. And so, I'm sorry, Joseph. I keep saying David. Joseph was sold. Joseph in his from his because of his brothers, because of some jealousy, was sold down to the traders that went to Egypt, and Egypt was already a growing nation. Then over time, before the famine hit, or right as the famine hit, even Joseph brought his family down, and that's where Israel kind of grew. They grew into the nation that came to be, and going into the promised land. And so we're getting that showing from the Lord, that Ezekiel talking about Egypt, how it grows and it prospers, how it also is influential, but they think of their blessing. They think that it's of themselves and or these other things, these other gods. And so we can see that Ezekiel's telling them that they're so proud. They're so proud and arrogant, and they feel like they've accomplished all of these things, and it has really nothing to do with the Lord, and that is completely incorrect. So much so that Ezekiel's telling them what has happened and how they prospered and why they prospered. And so we can see that Ezekiel's also giving them a prophecy that they too will be given to the king of Babylon. And bringing past to present, does that happen today, where people get to a point where there's so much good things going on, things are going their way, they don't see, basically it's like they're on a pedestal, or they're on the top of the ladder, they're on top of the food chain, they're too good to fall, they're too wise to fall, they're too strong to fall, like nothing could tear someone or a group of people or ourselves down. Do we get to that point where we're so prideful, or have you seen that even things that we know that the Lord has done, which he's done all of it, they don't even consider. It's not even a thought. It's always about the self, what the self has done, and congratulating the self. So we can see that. We can see that there's some conceitedness in there. There's some pride and arrogance in there. And we can see that instead of thanking the Lord and blessing him and praising the Lord and thanking all of the wondrous works that the Lord has done, because that's what the Lord wants for us, only the good things. And yet being arrogant and prideful and not giving him the glory. And this is a whole nation that is basically not giving him the glory, worshiping false gods, doing detestable things, and just not really caring that the Lord still cares and loves them, because he's the one that created us all. So he has that right to love each and every one of us. But as we can see, bringing past to present, can we see that? Can we see prideful arrogance, people who are too strong to fall, too wise, everything's going for them. And what happens though? We can see when the pedestal is knocked down, when the tower shatters, it is a catastrophic experience. So keep the Lord in focus in all things of our lives, because he is the good shepherd. Before we go on though, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think?